Report writing secret number 2. Do a thorough review of records. And the review of records, of course, is best done in advance of your meeting with the injured worker. Now, this is not always possible, but 95% of the times, with a little due diligence, it is possible. It's only the extreme circumstance where you will not receive your medical records in advance of the evaluation, and this should be the job of your staff. If not your staff, then you could be responsible for this yourself, and that is if you do not have the medical records 2 weeks before the date of your examination, that should throw up a red flag to you. That should signal you that that you need to take action to ensure that the medical records will be there at least 1 week in advance of your meeting with the injured worker, so that you have a chance to review and go through those records and know what the outstanding issues that are going to drive your examination are. So in this section, we're going to talk about a procedure for performing a thorough review of records. And the review of records procedure is governed by labor codes. There are specific labor codes that describe our obligation as QME evaluators in the review of records. Specifically, those include labor codes 4062.3D, labor code 4628A2, Title 8 CCR 10606, and then also Title 8 CCR 41, Section B, subsection 2. So let's review these very quickly, and then I'll give you a practical method that I learned from a very good colleague of mine to efficiently and effectively do a thorough review of the records in compliance with each of these labor codes and regulations. So let's begin with Labor Code 4062.3D, and we talked about this earlier on in this program, and because of its importance, I want to elaborate on the review of records procedure now. Review of records is one of the complexity factors that drive the level of billing for your medical legal report under Regulation 9795. And so it's important that it be done properly. And how do you know if it's done properly? You know that you've done your review of records properly and that you can legitimately bill for your review of records and establish the review of records as a complexity factor when your review of records complies with the 4 codes and regulations that I just cited to you. So beginning with Labor Code 4062.3D states that in any formal medical evaluation, the agreed or qualified medical evaluator shall identify the following. So you shall identify the following. 1. All information received from the parties. 2. All information reviewed in preparation of the report. And 3. All information relied upon in the formulation of his or her opinion. So basically, you're obligated under Labor Code 4062.3D to identify all information that you reviewed, that you relied on, and that you received. Basically, you have to identify everything that you rely upon in the formulation of your opinions and conclusions. How do you identify it? You identify it in writing in the review of records section of your report. Labor Code 4628A2 requires that the physician review and summarize the prior medical records. Review and summarize. Now, with Labor Code 4062.3, the one we just went over, it required that you identify all information. This code, Labor Code 4628, requires that you review and summarize. How do you review the medical records? Well, you review them by reading them. How do you summarize? You summarize those records in writing. Under the Review of Records section of your report, you are obligated under this code to give a summary of each of the records that you received, that you relied upon, and that you reviewed. So far we're required to list, we're required to identify, we're required to review, and we're required to summarize the records. What about Regulation 10606? Under this section, known as the Physician's Report as Evidence, it states that these reports shall include, where applicable, a listing of all information received from the parties, reviewed in preparation of the report, or relied upon for the formulation of the physician's opinion. So that's sort of a restatement of Labor Code 4062.3, which required that we identify all information received, reviewed, and relied upon. So this is a slightly different language that requires us to list the information. So that might be the same. Identifying and listing is, in my opinion, is the same. You do that by making a list, and I recommend making a list in chronologic date order that identifies and summarizes all the information that goes into the formulation of your report. Finally, CCR 41, Section B, subsection 2 states that all QMEs, regardless of whether the injured worker is represented by an attorney, shall review all available relevant medical and non-medical records and/or facts necessary for an accurate and objective assessment of the contested medical issues in an injured worker's case before generating a written report. The report must list and summarize all medical and non-medical records reviewed as part of the evaluation. So here you are. You're at your desk and UPS or the mailman brings to your door a box, and looks like a box from an insurance company, and you open it up and there's a stack of medical records 12 inches thick. According to these 4 labor codes, we are required to list, to identify, to review, and to summarize those medical records. How do we do it? Well, the following, what I'm going to give you now, is a procedure that the best and most persuasive doctors have all independently arrived upon in order to handle small, medium, and large stacks of medical records in an efficient and an effective manner that complies with the requirements of the labor codes and regulations. So very quickly, take those medical records and organize all those records in date order. Separate out all duplicates and unrelated documents to produce a final book. That's what I call the final book of the history. This book allows you to read the history by chronology exactly the way that it happened in real life. And this is not the way we receive our medical records. Usually we receive the medical records in separate stacks. For example, there might be a stack of records from the hospital, and there might be a stack of records from the primary treater, and there might be a stack of records from the primary care physician, non-industrial primary care physician such as Kaiser, and there might be a small stack of records from diagnostic study facilities, and all these different stapled groups of records from different providers. Well, the only way to get a good sense as to what's happening with this injured worker chronologically is to put all the records in chronologic order, including records from non-industrial medical treatments. Those need to be integrated into the medical records related to the industrial injury by chronology, so that you can see what kind of treatment your injured worker is receiving from all sources on a day by week by month by year basis chronologically. Once you have the records in chronologic order, then you're going to read the records in their entirety, page by page. And you want to be able to testify at deposition or even in supplemental report if necessary that indeed you turned every single page of the medical records. As you're reading the records in their entirety, you want to highlight key information that you later are going to memorialize in your report in the review of records section. And so the information that you highlight on each particular medical record is going to constitute your summary of that document, and that summary is later going to be memorialized in the review of records section of your report. Once you have all the medical records highlighted with the key information, then you list and summarize each document by number 1, date. In other words, they go in chronologically. You then describe the author and provide a description of the document. There are some documents that are going to be recurring documents that you'll be referring to time and time and time again. For example, the doctor's first report of occupational injury or illness. You might have 2, 3, or 4 of those to refer to if the injured worker has treated with multiple providers. The primary treating physician's progress report, or the PR2 report. You may have any number of recurring instances of that document. In that case, you simply type the title of the document out one time, copy it to your clipboard, and then paste that in every time you refer and summarize a new PR2 form. Same thing goes for work status report, primary treating physician's permanent and stationary report, or physical therapy evaluation reports. These are all reports with recurring titles, and those you can simply paste to your clipboard and copy in as necessary, and then provide a summary of each of those documents. And the information that you summarize will differ. Many doctors differ in what they consider to be the important key critical information on each document, but you want to be documenting what you consider to be the key information, and the key information upon which the conclusions and report and opinions of your report are going to rely. That's the information that you want to go in to this section of your report. Use bullets to identify major topic headings. For example, subjective complaints would have its own bullet heading. Treatment plan would have its own bullet heading. Work status would have its own bullet heading. Diagnosis, and etc. You get the idea. But use bullet headings to identify major topic headings. And summarize each document with the information on which you rely for the conclusions of your report. That's one of the codes, and one of the requirements of the codes is that you list the information upon which you rely. If you don't rely on the information, don't simply put something down just to be doing something. Put down and summarize and identify the information on which you rely. Included in the reference materials that I've given you with this program is a template, is a review of records template, and you can use this template in your reports. The template presents the documents in a numbered list, which is visually pleasing, and also conveys the message that the report has been carefully and precisely crafted. And that's an impression that you do want to convey, that you're precise and that you're accurate and that you have attention to detail. The template also has installed many of the symptom questionnaires that you'll use in the course of your evaluation. And we talked about some of those symptom questionnaires earlier. Many of those symptom questionnaires contain information upon which you're going to rely for the conclusions of your report. So, consistent with the codes and regulations, we need to list and summarize each of those documents, and I have those already pre-installed onto the template for you. In addition to symptom questionnaires, if there's any additional diagnostic studies that you order as a result of your evaluation, you would then also add a listing of those diagnostic studies also in the review of records template. And it'll probably be one of the last things on the template because they fall chronologically as probably the last medical procedure that you ordered. So make sure to do a thorough review of records that complies with the 4 codes and regulations that are cited here. And if you do so, you will indicate to the reader of your report your attention to detail, and will make your report much more persuasive and credible, and will help it stand out from the crowd. And in the case that you're ever deposed in the future and you're sitting amongst attorneys and you're being required to recall information, this is where an accurate and concise review of records comes in quite handy, and can many times save you from searching stressfully through a stack of medical records and looking for critical passages that you can easily locate in your review of records summaries.